Okay, so this book is The Book Thief. It's by Markus Zusak, and it really truly is one of my all-time favorite books. Here I have both of the covers. This is the American published version, and this one is from the UK. You can see sort of the differences between the covers here. This one's showing like a domino effect. This one's showing Death dancing with a young woman, and the reason being, Death is the narrator of this book. Death being the narrator made this one of the most interesting books that I've ever read before for two reasons. I've not read a lot of books where Death is the narrator, number one, and Death is actually a likable character. You learn the personality that Death has, and Death is sort of witty and sarcastic, but at the same time has feelings. So it has this very unique trait about it, and it's unlike any book that I've ever read. Markus Zusak generally writes books that are geared towards young adults, like, let's say 11 to 16 or 17, but this book has actually become very popular even for adults because of the topic that he's writing about and the way that the book is written. It sort of became a very popular book among book circles and book groups and things like that as well. We unfortunately don't have this in the library yet, but I do have my own personal copy. One of the few things that I brought with me to Jerusalem was my copy of this book.
Can we read it for next time?
I'm sorry?
Can somebody read it for
Yes, absolutely. So a few things. The setting is Munich in Nazi Germany during the time of the Holocaust. So those of you who went to the museum yesterday might have some ideas. Hold on to questions for just a sec, okay? Thanks. And because of that, the story has very much a lot to do with the war that was occurring, and the conflicts are related to the setting as well. The main characters are Liesl Memminger. She is an orphan. She doesn't have any parents, which is a significant part of the story as well. Death, obviously, as I mentioned, because Death is the narrator, and Death is going around everywhere because all of these people are dying. And essentially, when death comes to someone, that means that that person is going to die. Another character is Hans Herbermann. This is the adoptive father of Liesl. He's a very kind man, and one of his characteristics is that he plays the accordion. You might think, why is that significant? The accordion is very symbolic in this novel, and during this time you can imagine how music was a very significant thing. They didn't have a lot of things to keep them entertained, and so the accordion becomes a very significant part of the novel. Another character is Rosa. She's Hans's wife, and she's the adoptive mother of Liesl. She's really sort of gruff. She's not necessarily mean, but she's not very motherly, kind, nurturing, and caring. And so the two of them together make a good couple sort of for Liesl to be adopted by, because she sort of grows up not being pushed around, but also being cared for in a different way than if she were like in a group home. Another character is Rudy. This is Liesl's friend who loves to run, and as you can imagine, during a time for war, a young boy isn't going to have a lot of opportunities to go out and go running, so running sort of becomes his escape in life. And the last character that I'll mention is Max, and Max is a Jew who is looking for a place to hide during this very tough time for Jewish people. And one of the main conflicts is that the Herbermann family has to decide whether or not they will house Max, because if they do that, they risk their own lives. If they are caught housing a Jew, as Germans, they themselves can be killed. So that's one of the main conflicts in the novel. Another conflict is her survival just as an orphan. She has a lot of things that obviously aren't going her way. She doesn't have a family, and so her struggle just to survive. And the last conflict that I'll mention is sort of just the survival of the family during this time of war. They go through a lot of hardships. They're a very poor family. They don't always have food. And so there are a lot of conflicts, both internal and external, for most of the characters. One of the main themes is redemption, because the book is really about the lengths that people will go to be saved, and the lengths that people will go to save lives and to save themselves. And one of the most interesting things to me about the book, again, is Death being the narrator. So I'm going to read to you two quotes from Death. The first one comes at the beginning of the book, and I find it to be really interesting, and it was one of the most intriguing things. As I read it, I thought, wow, I really want to read this book, and I hadn't felt like that in quite some time. But this is Death talking about himself. They give him the male, Death is a male. And it says, "I do not carry a sickle or a scythe. I only wear a hooded black robe when it's cold. And I don't have those skull-like facial features you seem to enjoy pinning on me from a distance." You want to know what I truly look like? I'll help you out. Find yourself a mirror while I continue. So death kind of has this sarcastic tone, and you sort of go, what is happening here? For death to be a first-person narrator is a very unique thing in this book. The next quote is also death speaking, but it's about 2/3 of the way through the novel. It is a bit of a longer book, but it's a very easy read. You're not getting stuck on a lot of vocabulary or words that you don't know. There are a lot of metaphors and things like that, but they're fairly easy to understand. And so this is towards the end, and Death says, so many humans, so many colors. They keep triggering inside me. They harass my memory. I see them tall in their heaps, all mounted on top of each other. There's air like plastic, a horizon like setting glue. There are skies manufactured by people, punctured and leaking, and there are soft, coal-colored clouds beating like black hearts. And then there is Death, making his way through all of it. On the surface, unflappable, unwavering. Below, unnerved, untied, and undone. And here we see that Death has feelings, that Death actually doesn't really want people necessarily to die. So there's this whole other conflict about Death having an internal conflict within himself about not necessarily wanting people to die. So overall, I give this book a 5 out of 5. It really truly is one of my favorite books, and I've recommended to lots of young adults and to adults to read the book, and the majority of them really like it because, again, it's very unique. It's unlike, I think, anything that you'll ever read. It actually has pictures in it as well. They're small drawings, and they're only in parts of it, but one sort of second part of the plot is that Max is a story writer, and so he writes all of these little sort of short stories and draws pictures along with it. And so as you're looking through the book, if you just flip through it, there are these little drawings, and you sort of go, what is that? One of the other main conflict in the book, and why the book has its title, The Book Thief, is that Lisa learns to read, and during this time, obtaining books was very challenging for a person in her situation. So she finds a book, and she takes it, even though it doesn't belong to her, and that's sort of her first theft. And then after that, she becomes sort of a stealing fiend for any time that she can get her hands on a book. She ends up sneaking into the mayor's library and stealing books there. There were book burnings going on during this time, and she can't imagine how or why anyone would ever burn a book. And so there's this whole, sort of other aspect, and that's why the book is titled The Book Thief. So I highly recommend it. If you have the chance to read it, I think the majority of you would enjoy it. Questions? Yes.
In fact, I have read it, and I think it's really an awesome book.
Isn't it great? I'm glad that you already read it. Oh, yes?
Do the girl and Death,
Interact?
interact in story?
Death, that's a great question. Death, as a first-person narrator, does not speak directly to anyone. It's just like you would sort of imagine if Death were a real thing, a real person. He doesn't, no, he doesn't interact. They don't have conversations or anything. Any other questions?
Do they meet? Does he kill her? Does he do
I can't tell you that.
He kills her.
Death doesn't kill
I
people.
can't say
You
that.
read a lot of books about death and you know
People die.
Yeah,
Yes,
someone
that's
does die in
the way
this
it
one, just so
works.
we're all clear. Any other questions about it? Yeah.
You said she's an orphan. Does it talk about her parents?
Yeah, at the beginning of the story, it tells how she became an orphan and how she ends up being adopted by them. Death is the narrator of the whole story, so Death knows everything.
Her parents died?
Yes, because Death knows how her parents died, right? Because it's during the time of the Holocaust, every person who has died, Death knows their life. Death is an omniscient narrator. He knows everything that goes on. So Death knows what happens to both her parents. There are other family members that Death knows about. So Death is very omniscient, which gives it a whole, sort of other strange and unique, conceptually a strange and unique thing for an author to do. Any other questions? No? Okay.